Barbara Coven-Ellis is a medically trained speech language pathologist and feeding therapist. She is trained in a variety of feeding methodologies for the infant, newborn, up through the teenager. She has a master's in speech language pathologist from Eastern Michigan University, and she just got her doctoral degree at Northwestern University. Welcome to the show, Barbara.
Thank you. Oh, I'm so excited to be here.
We're excited to have you because I can tell you I have some experience in self-feeding and sort from a dietitian perspective. But I get a lot of questions, particularly on my YouTube channel, about young children who are disinterested in feeding themselves. They won't do it. They don't seem motivated, or they were doing it great in the first year of life, and then they seem to not be doing it anymore. So what I wanted to talk about was this whole concept of self-feeding, from why it's so important developmentally, how to help and support a child with self-feeding, and then how to navigate sort of these situations that can be so frustrating. You've made gains in this area and all of a sudden the child's dropped off. So you work with kids. You've been working with kids for a long time. Tell us a little bit about sort of the work that you're doing today, and then define self-feeding for us.
Well, so this is a second career for me, and I've been a speech pathologist now for 13 years. And I fell into feeding because I was working in an outpatient pediatric clinic at a hospital, and everybody comes on your caseload. And so I started getting kids and I fell in love with it. Absolutely fell in love with it. And then I started doing some work in the special care nursery, which is your simplest level of the NICU, and fell in love with all of those different things and how those early experiences can impact what's happening later on. And it just became my passion area.
That's great. I have a similar origin story too, just having that rotation with children and being like, oh my God, this is my population. No doubt about it.
Yep. These are my peeps.
Yeah. So yes, those early experiences really can foreshadow some of the later experiences in a child's life, particularly as you were mentioning the special care nursery. And oftentimes those children have, respiratory support, feeding tubes,
all sorts of negative experiences around their mouth.
Exactly. And that can really foreshadow how they feel about eating.
Very, very much so.
So we'll get into that. But just for the listeners out there who might not have ever thought about the term self-feeding, what exactly does that mean?
Well, it's in steps. Let's not assume that it goes right from you're feeding them to they're feeding themselves. It's a stepwise progression, just like anything else that's developmental. And it might start with something as simple as sucking food off your fingers, and which is one of the reasons we want babies to get messy, because we want them to get those kinds of experiences and understand that bringing their hands to their mouth is where they start, getting that nutrition and those lovely tastes. But what we're ultimately going for is a child that can independently scoop up that food and, or use a fork to poke that food and get it into their mouths independently, lift up something, get it to their mouths independently. But there are a whole bunch of skills in between that we have to think about. And oftentimes those skills end up going over to the OT side of things if they're just not able to get their hands up the way they should, or maybe they get their hands up, but then they can't rotate their wrist to get that utensil into their mouth. It can be very complex for some kids.
And an OT is an occupational therapist. What, as the role of the parent as a child is developing their self-feeding skills, what is that role?
Opportunity, opportunity, opportunity. So one of the things we got to do is we got to expose kids. Okay. And this is one of the things that is so fun in my situation. So I have to tell you a quick story about a baby who just came in last week. And I had the high chair ready. I had everything set up. And the first thing they did when they got the baby into the high chair was they put him in this full body cover up,
Yeah.
and it
Then
was on the arms and everything. They tied him in, and then they put a silicone bib on top, and they started putting it on, and it went, whoa, 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 whoa. This is my space. It's okay. They can get messy. But this idea that we can't get messy is one of the things that's kind of getting in our way. Okay. So what we want babies to do is we want them to be able to touch and experience food. So we want to put things on that tray so they're feeling it. And the reason that's important is ultimately, if we want them to be able to pick up food, they got to know what it feels like in the first place, right?
Yep.
And not only that, but that experience of touching the food tells them so much information about what's coming to their mouth. So I want you to picture going to a new restaurant that you've never been to before. Okay. And you order something that's spectacular or whatever, but you have specific dietary things, like you don't like this sauce or that particular pepper or whatever. Do you just take a bite?
No.
You don't. If it's a sandwich, you peel it open and you make sure the sauce you didn't like isn't there. If it's a pasta, you might cut it open and check out what's inside, but you never just pop it in. I mean, that's a very brave person who just pops it in their mouth, and
Yeah.
very few of us do that. But we expect babies and kids to do the same thing. We expect them to just try what we give them instead of putting it out there for them to explore and decide. And that's
Yeah.
part of the self-feeding process, is they've got to be able to explore what it is to decide if they want to put it in their mouth.
Right. So opportunity to explore sounds like that's the main parenting role here when we're trying to support kids in self-feeding.
That's one of our very big first ones. And then the second one is, kids don't automatically get that lovely scoop, they need that ability. So when we're working with utensils in particular, mom should have one, baby should have one. Sometimes with some kids, you got to have, they're going to be two-fisted eaters, and otherwise they're going to grab yours. Load the spoon for them because they just can't do that part themselves. So we load it for them. They're feeding themselves, and we might feed them a bite. They're feeding themselves because we're pretty inefficient with those bites we're feeding ourselves. But at that same time, we're getting that opportunity to bring the food to our mouth. We're getting the opportunity to figure out, where is my gag reflex? Because, of course, we're going to shove it in too far, make ourselves gag.
Yeah.
And that's actually a necessary step, because that moves the gag reflex back on our tongue when our body starts to realize, okay, it's time for solids. We need to work things a little differently now.
Instead of liquids and suck, swallow. Yes. So when should a parent start thinking about introducing self-feeding?
From the beginning. From the very beginning. Yeah, we, back in the 50s, and then later on, those parents who were trained then, it was all about, scoop it in, shove it in, get that food in there. We've realized that that's probably not the best thing. And so these days we very much like to start it at the beginning, because for one, that gets kids interested in participating in the whole process. And two, it helps with the whole developmental fine motor. We're encouraging it at every single meal. We're getting to learn about using first that raking grasp when we're really little, and then a bit later that pincer grasp that we use, when we see kids picking up their Cheerios, etc.
Yeah. Yeah. So around 6 months, it sounds like, or even maybe between 4 and 6 months in terms of developmental signs of readiness for solid foods and things of that nature.
Yes. I will always defer on that to a pediatrician.
Yep.
Because we have GI to consider too. And for many babies, their GI tract is really not ready for solids until they're around 6 months.
Correct.
So, that's a pediatrician parent
Mhm.
discussion.
Yeah, got it. Or a dietitian discussion.
Yes, exactly.
Um, so why is it so important developmentally for young children to develop the skill of self-feeding?
Well, it has to do with all of those wonderful cognitive things. I mean, we're doing so much there. Um, it's like I said, it's all the fine motor, it's the gross motor. It's so complex. I think right here, Jill, there's not too much more I can add to this.
Sure. No, that's fine. I mean, I think of also social emotional development and sort of the hierarchy of social emotional needs, like the need to feel like you
Independent?
have independent and you have will, right? You're
Yes.
developing your will early as a child. And I have seen children in the past who seem to have very low confidence with self-feeding. And sometimes I wonder if it's because somebody else has been doing all the feeding and they haven't had the opportunity to learn those skills for themselves. Not from a fine and gross motor standpoint, but from I'm building confidence, I'm fulfilling that psychological need of I can do this. I have a will of my own and I'm building my confidence. Do you
Yes.
see that at all? Does that resonate with you?
Yes, it does. Again, you gotta remember most of my population, it has something's gone wrong or
Yeah.
they're not the neurotypical population.
Mhm.
So, I'm always working on building that confidence,
Mhm.
and again, because my mind goes to that different population, I don't always apply it to my neurotypical kids. But you're right, absolutely. We're building that independence and we're building that, understanding that I can do, and we're also building the idea of, the separation of you and me in a good way
Mhm.
because, we have to be able to say no,
Mhm.
and boy, is that a frustrating step. I oftentimes talk to my parents about that, that yes, it's a really hard step, but it's an important step, and developmentally, it's absolutely essential because that's where we're starting to break away and get some independence and
Yeah.
start to be a separate being from mom.
Yeah. Yeah. So important, and it's amazing how that can really be encapsulated with the feeding process and with food.
Absolutely.
And as parents are out there listening, just a reminder, when you have a young infant, young toddler, mid-aged toddler, preschooler, we're talking, 5 or 6 feeding sessions, opportunities to eat in a given day. And so that's partly why sort of this developmental lens, when you're looking at feeding in terms of helping children develop cognitively, emotionally, psychologically, um, that's part of why it's such a key area for families to be able to capitalize on these developmental milestones because feeding is happening so frequently during the day.
And let me pop in there
Sure.
because, I want to I want to make a caveat here. Independence does not mean that we're doing it without supervision,
Right.
okay? It does not mean we are walking away from baby because we are
No.
still at a high risk for choking and, slipping, falling, all of those things out of a high chair. Even when we're strapped in, high chairs can tip over.
Mm.
Um, and the other thing is that you started to bring up was the social. I am one of the things that I find very concerning these days, and, I talk to a lot of my families about, and oftentimes is the root of where they're having some challenges with feeding is mom might not even be sitting there,
Mhm.
or if she's sitting there, she's really not involved. And that's a problem.
Mhm.
Eating is social, we, we eat together. It's one of those wonderful things that we do, like at birthday parties, and we do it at holidays. And it's because it's central to the whole relationship of family and parent. And when we just sit there and we're reading a book or we're on our phone or iPad or whatever, and we're not intimately involved in the process with baby,
Mm-hmm.
and that doesn't mean we're shoveling food in their mouth,
Mm-mm.
but maybe we're sharing a bite.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you might not be having the exact same thing as baby, but you're having a cup of coffee and you're having something along with it. So you're both sharing in that moment. When you go out with your girlfriends, what, or your best friend or whoever, what do you usually do? Let's meet for coffee. Let's meet for da da da. And you're sitting down. It's that shared intimacy, and it's so important. Um, Oftentimes kids are not going to eat if you're not eating too,
Mm-hmm.
and early on, we've got a thing called mirror neurons. And people don't know much about that, but if you watch a baby when you're talking to them, oftentimes they're making faces along with you, making that ooh as you're going ooh, and they're smacking their lips when you're going ma 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 ma. That is neurological.
Mm-hmm.
That's the brain saying, "Oh, I need to copy you." We do the same thing when we're eating. If we watch a parent chewing on something, we start going, "Oh, oh, no." That's one of our early stages that we start telling us about readiness, right? When the baby is sitting on your lap and they're looking up at you and you're drinking and eating and they're going,
Yes.
all of that early stuff. And that's so cool. But then when we sit down with them and we're not sharing in that food, we're not giving them that wonderful opportunity to watch our mouth do those things. They're not getting the opportunity to watch us sip from a cup or suck from a straw where their lips go in imitation. Those are
Mm-hmm.
all skills we're building when they're imitating those things. They're learning so much. And so we want to think about that when we're eating, when we're sitting them down to eat. It's a partnership. We're doing it together.
Sure, sure. And for folks, if you're listening on audio, I invite you to go over and watch the video because Barbara just did a master class in all the mouth moves that infants might want to mimic you doing. So that was brilliant. So go watch this interview on YouTube as well. I want to circle back to you. You talked a little bit about gagging and then you talked a little bit about choking. And
Yes.
so I know that this is a primary fear for lots of parents who are just starting out feeding their young infants and toddlers. Can you differentiate between choking and gagging and sort of allay some of that fear that parents have?
So gagging is a natural thing. Okay. It's a protective reflex that we have from day one. And it is protective. When we are born, if this is your tongue, the gag reflex is way up front, and this is the back of your mouth. Gag reflex is way up front. It moves back developmentally as we get a little older. And when we first start out eating, it's about here. So,
Midway
yeah,
in the mouth.
midway. And
Mhm.
so a lot of things will still make us gag if they go too far back. That's why one of the things we have to do is start with early mouthing experiences to start helping that gag reflex move back. So if you're looking at feeding experts, people like Diane Barr,
Mhm.
or and she's one of my favorites because she's an all oral motor person.
Yep.
She's going to talk to you about early mouthing experiences. Those are those
Mhm.
things where they've got the teethers and all of those different things. The opportunity for the baby to put their fists in their mouth and suck on their thumb and chew on their hands. We want those experiences. Those move the gag reflex back. And for those babies who never mouth anything, that gag reflex is not going to have moved back. So when you start the solids, you're going to have a little more challenge.
Yeah.
And oftentimes that fact that they're not putting in their anything in their mouth maybe a little bit of a pink flag that we've got some things going on that we want to start saying, okay, that hand never goes to the mouth. The toys never go in the mouth.
Hmm.
Why? And how can I encourage that by finding some things that maybe we can get baby to start mouthing some appropriate toys and things. So a gag is that it's that it's that almost looks like they're going to vomit, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the purpose of that is to move things forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's gotten too far back, and the tongue has not figured out either how to move it back safely, or the tongue has figured out, oh, I need to chew this, or this is something that's I'm not ready to manage yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we gag it and we move it forward.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Again, safety, and it's okay. And that baby's telling you something. Maybe you gave them too big a bite.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you gave them something that they're not ready for. And we need to teach them to get it over to their molar surfaces first.
Mm-hmm.
It also could be that baby just got a flavor that they did not expect and are not quite sure of. It may not be that they don't like it, but that it's brand new.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the important things, for people like you who are always talking about expanding food, what the choices and things. Don't think that just because they gagged on it one time is that they don't like it. Because
Right.
oftentimes it's just, oh, wow, what was that?
Yeah.
And get that out of my mouth. But then if it's on their tray, they may try it again and go, hey, maybe that's okay, because it may be bringing back a memory from when they were in utero and they tasted that little bit of amniotic fluid, and mom maybe liked something spicy or something very sour. And the first time they taste it themselves, it's a little much. But then when they start remembering, it's like, oh, wait a minute. That was one of those wonderful things I tasted in utero. I think maybe I
Yeah.
want to try that again. Now, choking is silent. Choking has blocked the airway. That's when we've got the big eyes. That's when we might have color change. That's when we can't cough.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? That's why we never walk away from the table,
Mm-hmm.
because it's silent. You won't hear it happen.
Yeah.
And that's when, it's really important that we understand how to turn a baby upside down and get that out.
Mm-hmm.
If we've had a choking experience, I know I have so many parents that's absolutely terrifying. We got to figure out why.
Mm-hmm.
What happened?
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes it's because we jumped too far ahead in what we were giving baby. Or baby got something in their mouth, maybe from the floor, whatever, their older brother's mini
Legos.
Lego.
Yeah.
It's always a Lego. Or it's a magnetile magnet,
Mm.
worse. But they are completely different things. And a gag is something that's going to happen and we kind of want to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Choking is what we never want to see.
Right. Right. So let's say your child has started self-feeding. They started off with, maybe they started baby-led weaning, which is small pieces of strips of food that the baby holds on to and sucks on. They dissolve in their mouth. Maybe your child started with pureed, spoon feeding. Things were going great. They started off so interested, really loved it. And then that interest dissipated. And the parent is noticing that feeding their child is becoming more of a struggle and that their child just doesn't seem to be into it.
Mm-hmm.
What might be happening here?
Well, there are a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
One of which can be, let's look at how much liquid this child is taking in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Some kids become these just milk chuggers, okay, or formula chuggers, and they fill up, and then solids just aren't interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, we got to look at how much milk is that kid drinking?
Mm-hmm.
Are they actually coming to the table hungry?
Mhm.
Okay. That's the first and simplest reason. Okay.
Yeah.
Next, we got to go, okay, did something happen along the way that's making baby not want to participate? Again, did something happen that we gave them something that maybe scared baby?
Mhm.
Um, and oftentimes what we'll find if it's not a hunger issue, we'll find that maybe it's just they've dropped off and maybe they've gone back to they only eat purees. Okay. I've
Yeah.
got a couple of kids like that right now. And what usually happens along the way is we continue to give them those developmental steps of food, the things that we know, okay, the next step is to give them something that is, they have to chew, da 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 da. And we haven't recognized that they actually haven't moved into that step developmentally. And I think this is
Mhm.
actually where I probably commented on one of your wonderful posts. I said, sometimes kids don't go on because they don't have the skills.
Yeah.
And we have assumed they have the skills because we think what we're seeing is chewing. Um, and we've given them things that are beyond their ability.
Mm.
So one of the things I wanted, and this is once again, you got to see this to know what I'm doing.
Mhm.
We oftentimes assume that because a jaw is going up and down, that there's chewing involved.
Mhm.
That's not necessarily chewing. There's a thing called tongue mashing where we take our tongue, okay? So if this is the roof of the mouth, we'll put our teeth here. And the food comes in here. Instead of moving it over to the molar surfaces where we're going to chew it, instead what we're doing is we're taking our tongue and we're going smash, smash, smash against the roof of our mouth. And for things like soft cheeses, scrambled eggs, things like that, that works great. Even
Mhm.
super soft fruits, raspberries, things like that. Um, but we assume that we're actually chewing because we see that jaw going up and down to move that tongue up, okay?
Mhm.
But that's not chewing. And we haven't gotten to the point where we're really actually smashing it on our molars. And we think that, and here's how do we know if a child is doing that? Almost always when we're tongue mashing, our lips are closed.
Mm.
Okay?
Okay. Mhm.
A baby who is chewing does not close their lips. A baby who is putting their food over on their molars, nyah, nyah, it's messy. It's
Mhm.
messy. We
Okay.
expect it to be messy. If they're doing this, where their tongue's going or their lips are
Mhm.
kind of puckering out
Mhm.
during that, that is a tongue mash. That is not a chew. And so what we got to do is we got to go, okay, let's see what happens if I put something over on these molar surfaces,
Mhm.
like maybe a graham cracker, a little bit of a graham cracker.
Mhm.
Are they chewing? Are they closing down on it? Are we hearing that crunch? Or is baby going, wait a minute, what the heck? That doesn't belong over there.
Mhm.
And then if that's the case, then we got to go, okay, we jumped too far ahead. We need to move back and we need to teach how to chew. And this is a point where you might have somebody like me who has to come in and teach chewing and figure out where things went wrong.
Mhm. Mhm. Very good. Again, get over to the YouTube recording of this because Barb has given you a master class on how to recognize whether your child is a food masher, tongue masher, or a chewer. A really great point of distinction. Are there any other signs or red flags? I know you called them pink flags, red flags that might indicate a child is experiencing a feeding delay or a texture sensitivity or anything like that, which might require more professional help.
Whenever a child is leaving out a category of food or multiple categories of food, then I get concerned.
Mm-hmm.
So if we've got a child who, parents will come in and say they eat crunchy foods and they eat yogurt, you know, crunchy foods and yogurt, but nothing in between.
Mm-hmm.
This could be a skill thing. It could be a sensory thing. It could be that the skill deficit resulted because of a sensory deficit. So
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, a kid despises doesn't like something so much sensory wise that then they don't build the skills to manage it safely. And so this gap appears in the kinds of foods that they will take. Sometimes, like you said, it can be sensory, and the child just can't manage the texture, gives them the creeps. Let's face it, we all have those things, even as grown-ups, right?
Sure.
Right. I mean, honestly, avocados. Oh, I know everybody loves things like avocado toast. I just can't do it. Avocados just nope, can't do it. And it's a texture thing and it's a flavor thing. I don't really like them. But that's the other thing. If you have a particular texture that's been introduced to you and it gets linked with a flavor you don't like, you might reject that texture just because it was always that flavor you didn't like.
Right.
So anytime we've got gaps, all my child eats is brown food. All they eat is white food. They're not eating a variety of colors, a variety of textures, or they'll eat everything but meat. Those are the kinds of things that, at that point, you probably need to be looking at finding somebody to give you a hand.
Okay, that's great advice. What one of the common questions or worries that parents have is, how do they balance this idea of allowing their child to self-feed with the very real worry of making sure they get enough nutrition? What do you say to your clients who might present with that concern?
My question always comes back to, let's talk about hunger, and let's talk about what's happening between meals. So Americans, back in the 70s, we got this wonderful thing called, commercials. Where all of a sudden we had 60s and 70s, we all of a sudden had all of these ads for these foods that had never really been considered foods before. We just put them on the side of the plate. We might put a few chips on the side of the plate, and all of a sudden we got this new category of food called snacks. And people think that snacks mean things like chips and crackers and salts and carbs. And so what they oftentimes do is when my kid seems hungry, they need a snack. And they give them these foods that are really empty they're calories. We need calories, okay? And but they're not the foods we want them to be eating and focusing on. And so, and I know this as a nutritionist, this is probably one of your big things. Snacks should be mini meals. They should be the things we want them to be eating, right?
Yeah.
So, and we shouldn't be allowing open snacking, right?
Correct.
So we have those 3 meals or 5 meals when we're really, really little. But those snacks that are in between are controlled, right? We control what the food is. It's not that they go in and just eat whatever they want.
Right.
And we control the time, right? So we have our meal, then the kitchen's closed for 90 minutes, 2 hours. When it opens up again, it's for the snack that we determined, right?
Correct.
And then when that snack is over, again, the kitchen is closed. We can have some water in between. Oh, I'm hungry. Well, meal, lunch is coming up at noon. Here's some water. We have to start getting our kids to understand what hunger cues are, so that when they come to the table, they don't just eat enough to make that hunger cue go away a little bit and then run away. Okay? Well, they run away, they're going to be hungry the next time. But if we give them snacks in between, that's a real problem.
Yeah. I agree with you. You're speaking my love language. Absolutely.
I know.
Structure.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, in this last few minutes of us being together, I want to present you with 2 cases, and I just want your quick and dirty, off the top of your head, how would you respond to this scenario? Okay? My son is 10 months old. If I leave food on the tray, he only plays with it like a toy and drops it on the floor. Then I'm nervous he doesn't get half the calories he's supposed to from solid foods, so I spoon feed him. Even spoon feeding him is hard, and he shuts his mouth.
Well, if he shuts his mouth, then he doesn't want the food. Okay? So what what's happening here? If it's spoon feeding, then we're talking it's something soft, right?
Mhm.
Are we giving the child a utensil? Are we loading the utensil for them and helping them out? Are we alternating where they take a bite, you take a bite with those utensils? If it's finger feeding, are we sitting down with them and are we eating some of it too? Are we leaving them alone? All of those things are the first things I'm going to ask. Are you eating with them? So oftentimes the child that's dropping things on the floor is the child that's bored. And the other thing is, let's make some rules, right? Let's not fill up their tray and overwhelm them. Let's give them a couple pieces. And when they start dropping it on the floor, whoop, these things belong here. They belong on the tray. No, thank you.
Yeah. Good. And I would add, spoon feeding at 10 months might be sort of past if it's a child that's not neurodiverse without any other problems.
Yes.
I would say that spoon feeding a child at 10 months is beyond, and maybe you're usurping their independence and they're bored with spoon feeding and they want to move on, but they're just being sort of held back. I see some of that happening.
Yeah, I would say that's in there too. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Second case. Ready?
Yep.
Okay. I did the technique of scooping the food and my toddler will pick up the spoon. We've been on it for 5 months now. She's 2 years, 2 months. She won't eat unless I scoop, and she won't even eat when I walk away.
Okay. First off, is she hungry? Second off, you scooped it for her. Can she get it to her mouth? Do we need to have an OT look? And the reason I say that is because I've seen kids as old as 5 years old where the parent is going, I scoop it, da-da-da-da-da-da. Well, here's the deal. Either they don't have the wrist movement or they don't have the scapular. And I will say it wrong and my OTs will kill me. So, but it has to do with scapular movement and being able to elevate the arm and bring it up. So if you're seeing kids that are eating with their elbow down like this, there's a problem. And you may have missed a developmental step there. So before you just throw in the towel and decide this is all behavior, make sure that they have all of those movements to do it. And even neurotypical kids, this can be a challenge for.
Yeah, I mean, that's such great advice. And in the course of my practice, I mean, I've seen kids who are 7 or 8 that won't use utensils, that only eat with their hands. So there's a lot that can be going on. And I think you've really given us sort of a master class on the physical, fine motor, gross motor skills that need to be involved with self-feeding, sort of the developmental milestones that we're looking for in terms of readiness, differentiating gagging and choking, and there's just so much there to self-feeding. I really appreciate all of your insight. Is there anything else that you would like to leave parents with who are listening or watching around this area of self-feeding? Either pearls of wisdom, warnings, whatever, is speaking to you right now.
The biggest thing I would say is make feeding social. Self-feeding does not mean feeding alone. It's feeding together. And unfortunately, I can't emphasize that enough. This idea of the self is great, but there's a relationship. Everything is relationship based, especially when we're little. And being there for them and sharing in that is so important. Self does not mean that they are now doing it on their own. Safety-wise, social-wise, all of those different things, those supports still need to be there.
Wonderful advice. Barbara, where can people find you, get in touch with you, follow you, if they'd like to?
Well, there's my website, which is chasingunicornsspeech.com. And I am on Instagram, but I'll tell you, I have been so busy doing my doctorate that I have not done much with that. And I am going to start doing more. But going to my website, I've got several blogs there, and I'm going to start expanding those blogs. Those are my first priority.
Awesome.
So
we will include the link to your blog, chasingunicornsspeech.com, in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I so appreciate it. I'm glad we've been able to connect.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited. I was so excited to be invited, and this has been so much fun.
Thanks for listening to the Nourished Child Podcast, where the #1 goal is to help you grow a nourished child inside and out.